Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Snuck in on me.
Mr. Chairman, first I would ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a statement from the National Community Pharmacists Association.
Without objection.
Let me go to Mr. McKinley's question real quick, and I understand that, maybe in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia you can check that, but there are some real difficulties. From my district, if you count the Commonwealth of Virginia, you can actually, if you work it out really well, you could hit 5 states in a single day. So I do think we need to be looking at some way that doctors can check, because you get down there in that little corner of Virginia and you're touching West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and North Carolina all within a matter of 45 minutes to an hour. So you'd have to work it. You'd have to be at the doorstep of somebody first thing in the morning, but you could hit 5 states in a single day. So I would ask you to take a look at what Mr. McKinley raised. Now, my question also is about the methodology used in the OIG report on questionable billing practices. We all want to stop these things. We want folks from abusing the opioids, et cetera. As the 5 factors used seemed cut and dry without much room for additional consideration, my concern is that these results could present a broad generalization about pharmacies which may not paint the whole picture. For example, as I've just described to you, I represent a fairly rural area, and that area has a higher percentage of senior citizens than the nation as a whole. So a pharmacy might dispense a higher percentage of pain relievers when compared to other pharmacies in a different geographic or demographic area, simply because there are not as many pharmacies around, and perhaps the other pharmacies have a younger population that they serve. Also, it would not be unreasonable to expect them to have a higher dispensation of volume of controlled substances from a pharmacy located near a hospital or a surgery center or an oncology center. There are also pharmacies who are contracted providers for long-term care facilities and hospices. So how does CMS plan to address the results from the study to truly target the bad actors that we all want to get to without hitting the good guys who are just trying to serve their customers? And this came up earlier as a part of a complaint, because one of my rural pharmacies has one supplier for their medicines, and at one point they got cut off, and so they were having to tell their customers, yeah, I can't fill it today, come back at the end of the week when we change months. Well, that's hard if you're a senior citizen. You need that pain medication. And in fact, a friend of mine's wife was told that, who had just gone through some surgery. She had to wait 3 days. They managed, but that's really not the way it ought to work, whether you be in the urban areas in the northern part of Virginia, Maryland, and D.C., or whether you're in southwest Virginia in the rural areas. How do we fix it?
Yeah, I think that's you make a good point. This kind of data analysis is a starting point. And, I think as to the specific methodology, I'll defer a bit to the OIG. But data analysis is always the beginning point of our investigations. Now, I had shared earlier that on a quarterly basis, we send lists of concerning or high-risk pharmacies to Part D plan sponsors. Our methodology takes 16 variables into account, and in order for a pharmacy to make it onto the list, they have to be a statistical outlier in at least 4 of the variables. So the purpose there is to do exactly what you're describing, which is try to bring a little bit more specificity to the methodology. But again, after that follows the investigation. I think it's really challenging unless the data is extremely cut and dry, which occurs in rare situations, to take administrative action without the ensuing investigation in between. That's where we really try to get to the bottom of, is something really bad happening here, or is this just an outlier, but it's explained by certain geographic factors that you've identified?
All right, I appreciate it very much. Appreciate you all being here today. I apologize. I too we've got pipeline issues as well, as you might imagine, and I was in the other hearing. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your time, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. Belarakis from the full committee for